Name may not be familiar to you, but this is John Brown. John Brown was enslaved in the mid-1800s and subjected to excruciating experiments by a Georgia doctor named Thomas Hamilton. Hamilton believed there were physiological differences between black and white people, and he used Brown's body to prove it. After he escaped slavery, Brown described what happened to him in an autobiography. Dr. Hamilton set to work to ascertain how deep my black skin went. This he did by applying blisters to my hands, legs, and feet, which bear the scars to this day. That happened because Dr. Hamilton, a slave owner, was trying to scientifically bolster the prevailing ideology that black people were mentally and physically inferior to white people and therefore benefited from enslavement. That thinking was so pervasive at the time, it spawned propaganda like this print from slavery apologists who pushed a narrative that enslaved blacks in the U.S. were better off than white factory workers in Britain. And it provided material for slaveholders like South Carolina Senator John Calhoun, who in an 1837 speech argued that slavery was a boon to black people. Never before has the black race of Central Africa, from the dawn of history to the present day, attained a condition so civilized and so improved, not only physically, but morally and intellectually. This kind of thinking gave rise to junk science like drapetomania, which translates to runaway madness. It was a clinical term of the 1850s based on the belief that slavery so vastly improved the lives of the enslaved, they would have to be mentally ill to run away. The term drapetomania was not removed from medical textbooks until after 1914. Human experiments and racist propaganda and fake science were used to prove something that we all know now is patently false. Black people did not benefit from slavery, quite obviously. But this year, in Florida, the echoes of those falsehoods can be heard once again. Yesterday, the Florida Board of Education approved new standards for Black history instruction that require lessons for middle schoolers to include, quote, how slaves developed skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. The old racist trope from the 1850s that slavery benefited the enslaved seems to have been resurrected in Florida, and middle schoolers in that state may be required to learn it. As part of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' efforts to whitewash black history, high schoolers in the state's public school system will now be taught that race massacres, like the racial terror in Ocoee in 1920, the largest incidents of voting day violence in American history, that those massacres included acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans. In reality, it was a white mob that killed 60 people in Ocoee after a black man tried to vote. But those guidelines are part of a new set of standards that Florida's Board of Education approved yesterday, downplaying America's history of anti-black violence. And as part of their campaign to Make America Florida, state officials want to export those standards nationally.